My father didn't raise his voice when he did it. That's what people don't understand. If he'd screamed, if he'd slammed his fists on the table, if he'd thrown a plate, then maybe I could have written it off as anger. A temporary storm. Something that passed. But he didn't. He looked at me the way a contractor looks at a warped plank, like a material defect you don't argue with. You just toss it aside. We were halfway through Sunday dinner. The kind we did every week in Ridgewood, New Jersey, because my father believed routine was a form of discipline. The kitchen smelled like rosemary chicken and lemon, like the kind of home people imagine when they hear Ridgewood. Warm lighting. Hardwood floors. Everything placed neatly like a catalog photo. And then I told them, I'm pregnant. The words landed quietly, but my heartbeat didn't. It was loud in my ears, pulsing like an alarm. My hands had gone cold under the table so fast it felt like someone had poured ice water over them. For one long second, neither of my parents moved. My mother's fork hovered halfway to her mouth, frozen as if the air had turned thick. My father, Gerald Hall, blinked once. Then his face shifted through stages like a traffic signal. Confusion. Disbelief. And then something harder than both, calculation. Because my father didn't feel first. He assessed. He evaluated. He decided. He set his napkin down slowly and leaned back in his chair. The chair didn't scrape. Nothing dramatic. Everything controlled. And that's when I knew I'd made a mistake. Not the pregnancy. Telling them. Because in our house, love didn't come as a gift. Came as a contract. And I just violated it. You're what? He said, as if he hadn't heard me correctly. I'm pregnant, I repeated, and my voice wobbled despite everything I did to steady it. I just found out. My mother stared at her plate. A mound of mashed potatoes sat there like a small mountain. She studied it with the intensity of someone trying to memorize its secrets. My father's eyes didn't go to her. They stayed on me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask who the father was. He didn't ask how far along. He asked the only question that mattered to him. Are you married? No, I admitted. His jaw tightened. Not in shock. In irritation. Like I just told him a project was behind schedule. And then he didn't yell. He spoke quietly, so quietly I almost leaned in to hear him. Do you understand what you've done? My mouth went dry. Dad, what you've done, he repeated calmly, is embarrass me. There it was. Not heartbreak. Not fear for me. Embarrassment. He started listing things like he was giving a performance review. My future at Hall Construction. My role. My reputation. His reputation. The business community. The legacy. He talked about me the way he'd always talked about me, like I was an extension of him, a tool he'd built carefully for a specific purpose. And now I was malfunctioning. I spent 21 years, he said, making sure you didn't become this. This, like I was a category. Like I was a mistake in human form. My stomach clenched. I'm still me. He stared at me as if I'd said something ridiculous. No, he said. You're a problem. That's when the chair snapped back. Not snapped, knocked. He stood up so fast his chair toppled against the hardwood floor with a crack that made my body flinch. My mother finally moved. She blinked. But she still didn't speak. My father leaned forward over the table, his face close enough that I could smell the coffee he'd been drinking all afternoon. And in that quiet voice, he said the sentence that rewired something inside my chest. You are the stupidest mistake I ever made. I didn't breathe for a second. My mind tried to reject it like an allergic reaction. My father didn't pause. You had one job, he continued. And you couldn't even do that. You couldn't even protect the one thing you were supposed to protect. My mother's eyes flicked up, just for a moment. Not to defend me. To check his mood. To see how dangerous it was. Then her gaze dropped back to the mashed potatoes. My father straightened. You have 1 hour, he said. Pack what you can carry and get out of my house. I stared at him. Dad, I'm your daughter. He tilted his head. Not anymore. I turned to my mother. My voice broke as I said her name. Mom. Constance Hall didn't look at me. Her mouth tightened slightly, as if she'd tasted something bitter. Then she said nothing. Not a single word. No wait. No Gerald stop. No let's talk. Nothing. That silence hit me harder than his cruelty. Because his cruelty was predictable. Her silence was a choice. And in that moment my mother chose comfort over her child. I pushed my chair back so quickly it scraped, and the sound felt wrong in the neat, quiet house. I stumbled upstairs, my legs moving like they belonged to someone else. My bedroom looked exactly the same as it had the day before. And somehow that made it worse. Posters, books, clothes folded neatly, the bed made, everything ordered like my father's idea of a good life. I grabbed a suitcase, then another. My hands shook so hard I couldn't fold anything properly. I kept hearing the word hour like a countdown timer. I packed with the speed of someone fleeing a fire. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, a framed photo of me at graduation that I hesitated over, then shoved into the suitcase anyway. I kept waiting for my mother to come up the stairs, to appear at my door, to offer help, to whisper, "I'm sorry," and mean it. But I only heard the television downstairs. Cheerful game show music and applause. While I erased myself, I walked back downstairs with both suitcases dragging behind me. My father stood in the entryway like a bouncer, arms crossed, face flat. My mother was still at the table. Her plate was half empty. She didn't look up as I passed. I felt something twist inside me. Not just pain, a kind of disbelief. Like I'd been living in a story where mothers always protected their children, and suddenly the script had been rewritten without warning. I stepped outside and the air hit me cold and clean and indifferent. I put the suitcases in my car. Then I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, staring at the house. 21 years. And it was over in 1 hour. I started the engine, and the first person I called was Tyler Webb, because Tyler was supposed to be different. Tyler was supposed to be the soft place to land. Tyler was the man who had looked at me like I wasn't a project or a legacy or a tool. He looked at me like I was a woman. I'd met him 8 months earlier, and even now I could admit the truth I didn't want to admit then. I was hungry. Not for attention, for being seen. Because in my family, I'd been raised like a boy, trained like an apprentice, praised only when I performed and mocked, quietly, subtly, whenever I showed softness. Dance classes. Not useful. Talking about feelings. Weak. Wanting to be cherished. Embarrassing. So when Tyler came along, 24, confident, charming, with that smile that made you believe whatever he said, it felt like someone finally opened a window in a room I'd been suffocating in. He told me I was beautiful. He told me I was strong. He told me he wanted a future with me. And my stupid heart, my starving heart, believed him. The phone rang. No answer. I called again. Voicemail. I texted him. Dad kicked me out. I'm pregnant. I need you. Please. Then I waited. In a dark parking lot not far from my parents' house, because I couldn't even drive properly. My hands were shaking too much. I sat there staring at the glow of my phone screen like it held oxygen. Minutes crawled. Then hours. By the time my phone buzzed, I grabbed it so fast it almost slipped out of my fingers. 6 words. That's all he gave me. I can't do this. I'm sorry. Then another line. Don't contact me again. I reread it 5 times because my brain refused to accept it. 8 months of promises. Baby name conversations. The way he held my face and kissed my forehead like he'd already decided I was his. All of that collapsed into 6 words. I called him again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. Again and again until my call didn't even ring. He blocked me. The man who talked about our future had cut me off like I was a wrong number. I sat there, mouth open, staring at the screen. And something inside me cracked. Not in a dramatic, clean way. In a quiet, messy way like a bone breaking under pressure. I was 21 years old. Pregnant. Disowned. And now abandoned. All within 24 hours. That's when the fear fully arrived. Not emotional fear. Logistical fear. The kind that grabs you by the throat. Where do I go? I looked at my bank account. $847. I'd never needed more than that before because I'd always had the Hall house as the safety net, even if it wasn't loving. And now that net had been yanked away. I drove to Tyler's apartment the next morning because I needed answers in person. Because I refused to believe someone could disappear like that. I stood outside his door for a full minute, rehearsing what I'd say. Then I knocked. A woman opened it. She was pretty in a polished way. Hair perfect. Skin glowing. Wearing an engagement ring that threw little flashes of light. She looked at me with confusion, then suspicion. "Can I help you?" she asked. I'm looking for Tyler," I said, my voice already shaking. Her eyebrows pulled together. "Who are you?" My stomach dropped. "Phoenix," I said. "His girlfriend." Her face went pale in stages. "His what?" Behind her, Tyler appeared. And the mask fell off so fast it was like watching someone rip off a costume. No warmth. No charm. No apology. Just irritation. Like I was a bill he hadn't paid yet. "Phoenix," he said, voice low and sharp. "What are you doing here?" My throat tightened. "You blocked me." His eyes flicked to the woman's ring, then back to me. "Lauren, go inside," he said. Lauren didn't move. 2 years, I whispered, staring at her ring. "You've been engaged for 2 years. Lauren's mouth trembled. "Tyler, is that true?" Tyler exhaled like this was inconvenient, not catastrophic. Then he looked at me and said flatly, "Handle it." I blinked. "What?" "The baby," he said. "Handle it. This is not my problem." I swear I felt my entire body go numb. Lauren made a sound, half gasp, half sob. I turned to her, the only person in that moment who looked human. "I didn't know," I whispered. Lauren stared at me like she was trying to decide whether to hate me or cry with me. Tyler stepped forward and lowered his voice. "Get out," he hissed. "Now." And he shut the door. Just like that. Not a conversation. Not an explanation. A door. That's what I was to him. A door he could close. I walked away from the building in a trance, and the nausea hit me hard. I leaned against my car and tried not to throw up. This wasn't morning sickness. This was betrayal with a heartbeat. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the steering wheel for a long time, because the alternative was thinking about what I'd just become. A single mother. A scandal. A mistake. In Ridgewood, reputations moved faster than truth. And my father had power there. He owned a construction company, he knew people, he had influence. If he wanted to poison the well, he could do it with one phone call. I didn't even realize he'd already started until I made my first desperate call to my aunt. She answered, voice tight. "Phoenix, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." Relief flared. "Aunt Carol, please, I just need—" "I can't," she whispered. "Your father called. He said if I help you, he'll cut me off from everything. He said you're unstable. That you made choices." My chest tightened. "I'm pregnant. I'm alone." "I know," she said, and I heard genuine pain. "I know. But he's serious." Then her voice dropped even lower. "I can send something quietly. Not much. But a click." Call ended. It wasn't her. It was fear. And that's when I understood. My father wasn't just kicking me out. He was erasing me. He wanted me isolated, so I wouldn't have anywhere to return. Someone, maybe a cousin who still had a conscience, slipped me $500 from my mother. Just once. And it came with a warning. "He found out last time," the cousin said. "He took her cards. He punished her." Punished her. Like she was a child. My mother was so trapped in comfort that she let herself be punished instead of walking away. And I started to see the true shape of my family. A man who ruled with fear. A woman who survived by shrinking. And me, the mistake. Cast out to protect their image. I found a room in a boarding house in Newark because it was the cheapest thing I could afford. $60 a week. A tiny room with a bed that squeaked and walls so thin I heard other people's lives through them. The air smelled like mildew, cooking grease, and hopelessness. I put my suitcases down and sat on the edge of the bed, holding my belly with one hand like I could protect the baby from the world through sheer will. And I cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just tears that came out quietly, because my body had no more energy for performance. Then I stopped crying, wiped my face, and stood up, because I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. I got 3 jobs. Mornings in a bakery starting at 4 a.m. Flour in my hair, hands cracked from washing dishes, customers complaining about muffins like it mattered. Afternoons at a dry cleaner, pressing other people's clothes while mine started to fray. The steam fogging my glasses, the smell of chemicals clinging to my skin. Evenings at a call center, headset on, strangers screaming at me until 10 p.m. My baby kicking sometimes when the stress got too high, like she was trying to remind me she was there. I slept 5 hours a night if I was lucky, and I told myself it was temporary, just until I got on my feet, just until Tyler came to his senses, just until my mother woke up, just until my father cooled down. I was still naive enough to believe time repaired things. But time doesn't repair cruelty, just reveals it. At 6 months pregnant, my body finally did what my pride refused to do. It shut down. I collapsed at the call center between cubicles. 1 second I was trying to speak politely to a man calling me names, and the next the floor rushed up like a wave. I woke up in a hospital bed under fluorescent lights. A doctor stood over me, expression stern. "You're overworking," he said. "You're dehydrated. Your blood pressure is dangerous." I tried to sit up. He put a hand on my shoulder. "If you keep this up, you'll lose the baby." That sentence hit me harder than any insult my father ever threw. Because my father's cruelty was about me. But this would be about her. I quit 2 jobs that week. I didn't have a choice. I survived on 1 income, food stamps, and anxiety so constant it felt like my body had forgotten how to relax. And then, in April, my daughter arrived. I named her Iris, after the flower and the goddess of rainbows, because she was color in a world that had turned gray. She was tiny and perfect and furious, like she arrived already offended by the cruelty of the world. I held her in my arms and felt a kind of love so sharp it scared me. A nurse asked gently, "Family coming?" I smiled and lied. "They're traveling." Because explaining the truth felt like bleeding in public. There was no father in the hallway, no grandparents waiting, no relatives bringing balloons. Just me, exhausted, terrified, and more in love than I'd ever been. And I made Iris a promise right then, while my arms trembled from the weight of her. "You will never feel unwanted. Not once. Not ever." That promise became my religion. Before we go further, don't forget to subscribe for more revenge stories like this. And comment below what you would have done if your parents gave you 1 hour to disappear. And if you're still with me, hit like. It tells the algorithm this kind of story matters. Because what happened next wasn't just survival. It was transformation. It was the moment I stopped begging for love and started building power. And it started with one thing that hurt more than my father's rage. My mother finally answered me. Not with a visit. Not with a phone call. With a letter. 1 paragraph. And a single word that made my blood go cold. "Sorry." The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Thin envelope. My mother's handwriting. No return address. As if even the act of writing to me needed plausible deniability. I opened it standing by the sink while Iris slept in the next room, one hand still damp from washing bottles. 1 paragraph. She said she was sorry. She said my father thought it was best if they move on. She hoped I understood. Understood. That word echoed through me like an insult dressed as empathy. There was no mention of Iris. No offer to visit. No question about how we were surviving. Just a polite retreat wrapped in a single useless apology. I folded the letter once. Then again. Then I slid it into a drawer and closed it like I was closing a coffin. That was the night I stopped waiting. Not for Tyler. Not for my parents. Not for rescue. Waiting is a luxury for people who still believe someone is coming. I had a baby to feed. The early years blurred into a rhythm made of exhaustion and stubbornness. Wake up before dawn. Feed Iris. Walk to the bus stop because gas cost too much. Work. Come home. Repeat. I learned how to stretch $10 into a week of groceries. Rice and beans became a personality trait. I memorized which stores marked down produce on Thursdays. I could calculate coupons faster than I'd ever solved algebra. Pride became something I couldn't afford. But dignity, that I refused to lose. Iris grew fast. Babies do. One day she was a bundle in my arms. The next she was standing, wobbling, laughing like the world had never wronged anyone. She didn't know we were poor. She only knew we were together. And that realization did something dangerous and powerful. It made me brave. The turning point didn't arrive as a grand opportunity. Came as a job listing. Property management assistant, entry level. The pay was barely better than the dry cleaner. The hours were longer. The commute was worse. But it was an office. It was paperwork instead of chemicals, phones instead of steam burns, possibility instead of survival. I applied without hope. Hope had burned me too many times. They called anyway. Her name was Miriam Castellanos, 68, widow, owner of a struggling property management company that smelled like old coffee and overdue invoices. She wore sensible shoes and had the sharpest eyes I'd ever seen. Eyes that missed nothing and forgave even less. My first day she didn't smile. "Can you type?" she asked. "Yes." "Can you think?" "I try." "Good. Most people don't." That was my welcome. I filed papers, answered phones, made coffee that she claimed was too weak for civilized society. I stayed late. I corrected typos. I noticed patterns in lease agreements and flagged errors no one else bothered to read. Miriam noticed. One evening, months in, she called me into her office. "What do you want?" she asked. The question caught me off guard. "From work." "From life," she said flatly. "Don't waste my time with small answers." I swallowed, and for the first time in years I told the truth. I want to never be powerless again. She studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Good," she said. "We can work with that." Miriam didn't mentor gently. She threw me into negotiations like swimming lessons, sink or swim, and she expected swimming. I learned rent rolls, cap rates, property valuations, zoning regulations that read like foreign languages. And I discovered something I'd never known about myself. I could see potential. Not optimism. Not fantasy. Potential. I could walk into a building everyone dismissed as condemned and instantly map what it could become. New floors. Better lighting. Smarter layouts. Profit hidden beneath peeling paint. My first real negotiation was with my landlord. He threatened eviction when I fell behind 1 month. I offered to fix the broken mailboxes myself instead of paying late fees. He laughed. I fixed them anyway. YouTube tutorials, a borrowed screwdriver, and language I hope Iris never repeats. When I finished, tenants actually thanked me. That was the moment I understood value. If you create it, you can trade it. I studied for my real estate license at 2 a.m. while Iris slept. Textbooks spread across the kitchen table. Highlighters dying faster than my patience. Coffee so strong it tasted like regret. I failed my first practice exam. I cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes, silent so I wouldn't wake her. Then I washed my face and tried again. When I passed the actual exam months later, I held the certificate and sobbed. Not because it was paper. Because it was proof. Proof that the girl who'd been given 1 hour to disappear could build something permanent. My first sale was a condo no one wanted. Weird layout. Strange smell. The kind of listing agents whispered about with pity. It had been sitting for 8 months collecting dust and price reductions. I staged it myself. Thrift store furniture. Borrowed lamps. Neutral paint. And yes, cookies baking before every showing because somewhere I'd read the smell made people feel at home. It worked. 3 weeks later it sold. My commission, $3,200. I stared at the bank screen for a full minute after depositing that check. Watching the numbers change felt like watching my identity change. For the first time in years I wasn't surviving. I was advancing. Miriam promoted me. Gave me better listings. Started introducing me as the one you want handling this. That sentence alone carried more validation than anything my father had ever given me. When Iris was 3, she asked a question that cracked me open. "Mommy, why don't we have a backyard?" She'd seen one on television. A cartoon with a swing set and a dog in endless green space. Our apartment had a parking lot. I knelt down to her height and made a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. "Someday," I said, "we'll have the biggest backyard in New Jersey." That night she handed me a drawing. A house too large. A yard too wide. 2 stick figures holding hands. I put it in my wallet. It never left. Success didn't silence the voice in my head. It just changed the volume. Every time I aimed higher I heard him. "Stupid mistake. You're not enough. You ruined everything." My father lived rent-free in my thoughts long after he'd kicked me out of his house. Miriam caught me staring at spreadsheets one afternoon, frozen. "Whose voice is that?" she asked without looking up. I blinked. "What?" "You're arguing with someone who isn't here," she said. "Who is it?" "My father." She finally looked at me. Fire him, she said. I laughed weakly. I can't. She leaned back in her chair. The best revenge, she said, is not proving them wrong. The best revenge is forgetting they exist while you build your kingdom. That sentence lodged itself inside me. I repeated it like a prayer every time doubt crept in. Then Tyler resurfaced. Of course he did. Iris was 4 when the message arrived. Friendly. Curious. Heard you're doing well. Maybe we should talk about her future. Translation. He'd heard I wasn't broke. I screenshotted every message and saved them in a folder labeled evidence of nerve. I never replied. Lauren, his ex-fiancée, did though. She reached out separately, apologized for something that wasn't her fault, and we ended up talking for hours. 2 women who had loved the same lie, comparing notes like detectives. Life is strange like that. Sometimes the people you should resent become the people who understand you best. Through industry gossip, I heard about Hall Construction. My father's company. Bad loans. Overextension. Contracts lost. Small cracks spreading through the foundation he'd once worshipped. I expected to feel satisfaction. I felt nothing. I was too busy building my own future to tour the ruins of his. By the time Iris started first grade, I had $180,000 saved. Not inherited. Not gifted. Saved. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was planning expansion. And that was the real turning point. Because the moment you stop trying to prove yourself to people who dismissed you, is the moment your energy becomes yours again. If this chapter hit you, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Comment below what kept you going during your hardest years. And if you're enjoying the journey, give it a like, it really helps the channel. Because the next chapter isn't just about success. It's about what happens when the people who erased you show up at your gate asking to be let back in. Success didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived quietly, in spreadsheets that finally balanced, in deals that closed without panic, in nights where I slept more than 5 hours and didn't wake up afraid. By 28, I understood something about myself that no one had ever bothered to teach me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was constructing a future brick by brick, contract by contract, choice by choice. When Miriam retired, she didn't throw me a party. She handed me her entire client list for a price so low it felt like theft. I'm not giving you a gift, she said when I protested. I'm making an investment. Then she placed a bottle of champagne on my desk. Open it when you make your first million. I still haven't opened it. Some victories deserve better occasions. I launched Phoenix Rise Properties from a 1-room office in Hoboken. 1 desk. 1 chair. 1 printer that jammed every 3rd page. And a level of determination that made sleep optional. I specialized in the buildings everyone else avoided. Condemned. Ugly. Too much work. I'd walk through cracked hallways and see polished floors. Look at broken windows and imagine sunlight. Hear city officials talk demolition and think renovation. 18 months later, my first major project, an apartment building everyone had written off, sold out in 6 weeks. Profit, $1. $2 million. I sat alone in my office staring at the numbers, waiting for someone to tell me it was a mistake. No one did. Because it wasn't. I kept a low profile. No flashy interviews. No personal social media. My business name appeared everywhere. Mine rarely did. The girl who'd been given 1 hour to disappear had learned the power of anonymity. Meanwhile, Iris grew into a confident, bright child who had never once questioned whether she was loved. That was my greatest success, and it didn't appear on any balance sheet. When she was 7, she asked about grandparents. I didn't lie. I didn't poison her with bitterness either. Sometimes, I told her, adults make choices that hurt people they should protect. She thought about it, then shrugged. Their loss, she said. You're the best mom ever. I cried in the shower that night. Not from pain. From relief. Russell came into our lives slowly. Architect. Divorced. Patient in a way that felt unnatural to me at first. He didn't push. Didn't rush. Didn't sell promises. He simply showed up. Again. And again. And again. Trust didn't grow overnight. It grew in quiet moments, school pickups, coffee refills, listening without trying to fix me. By the time Iris was 8, he wasn't the man I was seeing. He was family. Chosen family. The kind built on consistency instead of obligation. Around that time I saw the listing. Thornfield Estate, Ridgewood, New Jersey. 6 bedrooms. Historic property. Massive land. Renovation needed. On the market for 2 years because the price scared people. 3 miles from the house I'd been thrown out of. I told myself it was practical. Best school district. Investment potential. Backyard space for Iris. All of that was true. But there was also poetry in it. Some purchases are financial. Some are symbolic. This one was both. We moved in 2 weeks before Iris's 9th birthday. The backyard she'd drawn years earlier was real now. Trees swing set, sunlight stretching across grass she could run through without hitting pavement. I didn't think about my parents. I didn't need to. But Ridgewood did. Whispers spread faster than facts in small towns. Did you hear? Gerald Hall's daughter is back. The one he kicked out. She owns Thornfield Estate. Apparently, my mother found out at her bridge club. Apparently, my father didn't believe it until he researched Phoenix Rise properties himself. I imagine the stages on his face. Denial. Recognition. Desperation. The call from my security team came on a quiet Saturday morning. There's an older couple at the gate, they said. They claim to be your parents. For a moment my heart stopped. Then it restarted, steady, controlled. I looked out my office window. Iris was in the garden laughing with Russell's son. Pure joy. Pure innocence. A life untouched by the people standing outside my gate. I told security I'd be down shortly. And I made them wait. 47 minutes. Partly to gather myself. Partly because some lessons are learned best through patience. When I finally walked to the gate, I saw them clearly for the first time in 9 years. Gerald looked smaller. Stress had carved lines into his face. His confidence, the thing that once filled entire rooms, was gone. Constance stood behind him, fragile, eyes red as if she'd been crying for days. He tried to smile. It was painful to watch. He started talking immediately. Words spilling out about family, misunderstandings, pride, reconciliation. He said he was proud of me. Proud. The same man who'd called me a mistake now claiming credit for my success. My mother said nothing. She just stared at the estate behind me, the gardens, the house, the life she'd never visited. I let him finish. Then I spoke. Calmly. I reminded him of his words. Of the hour. Of the photographs I'd been cut from like I'd never existed. I turned to my mother and reminded her of the letter. The single paragraph. The single word sorry that had tried to replace years of silence. Gerald's composure cracked. He admitted the company was bankrupt. They were losing their house. Everything he'd built was collapsing. And then he said it. I need your help. Not I miss you. Not I was wrong. I need your help. The irony was almost elegant. The man who refused to be my father when I needed him now demanding I be his daughter when he needed money. I almost laughed. But what I felt instead was clarity. I looked past them to the house, to the garden where my daughter's laughter floated through the air. And I smiled. Not cruelly. Not triumphantly. Freely. I told him I wouldn't help. Not because I wanted him to suffer. Because I didn't owe him anything. The debt had been settled the day he gave me 1 hour to vanish. I told him my legacy wasn't rescuing people who discarded me. My legacy was raising a child who never felt unwanted. Then I turned to my mother. You could have left, I said quietly. You could have chosen me. Her face crumpled. Gerald put his arm around her, still playing protector, still pretending. He tried anger. It didn't work. He tried guilt. It bounced off. He tried remorse, voice cracking, eyes wet. 9 years too late. Constance finally spoke. Can I just see her? Once. My granddaughter. For a split second my heart wavered. Then I remembered the letter. The silence. The years she'd chosen comfort over courage. Iris doesn't know you exist, I said gently. And keeping it that way is the kindest thing I can do for her. They left slowly, hoping I'd call them back. I didn't. A few minutes later, Iris ran up, breathless from playing. Who were those people? She asked. I looked at her. This girl who had never doubted her worth for a single second of her life. Nobody important, I said. And for the first time that wasn't bitterness. It was truth. That evening we ate dinner in the garden. Russell beside me. The kids laughing. Plates I hadn't cooked myself because I could afford help now. And there was no shame in that. Iris showed us a drawing. Our house. Our yard. 3 figures holding hands. And Russell's son beside us. Family. Chosen, not assigned. I looked around at the life I'd built. Every piece earned. Every brick placed by my own decisions. Not a dollar, not a favor, not a blessing had come from Gerald or Constance Hall. And that was exactly why it mattered. They threw away a daughter. They didn't get to claim the woman she became. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Comment below, would you have opened the gate or kept it closed? And if